Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith along with Ivan Ozerets. Pronounce your last name?
Ozerets.
Your mother's proud of the fact that you can pronounce it. That's great.
Yeah.
198. We're keep climbing up. We're going to call up Jackson Bowen. Jackson Bowen's a great guy. I love what he's doing with his associates. They have a company called TennisBloc. That means tennis around the block, making tennis affordable, accessible, and they're throughout the state of North Carolina. He's organized a couple of workshops for us. But let's get the ball rolling by giving him a call, and we'll talk tennis. Tennis for everyone. Tennis is too expensive. And I'm a little slow on the phone. A little slow. Slow on everything, actually. Ringing once.
Hey, Steve.
Jackson Bowen, Steve and Yvonne, along with our amateur hour called the GreatBase Tennis Podcast.
Hey, Jackson, how are you?
Hey, Yvonne, doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
No, it's great to have you as a guest. TennisBloc, I told you, listeners, we're going to talk about that, but let's talk about your beginning days. Get the ball rolling. What type of baby food did you eat? No, just tell us what type. How'd you get rolling, and how did you end up in the tennis business? Your passion for tennis.
Oh yeah, a little bit about my tennis background. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Yeah, well, I love to tell the story about. I got taken to the tennis court as a kid, ever since I could walk, because Mom loved tennis. I'm the oldest of 5. She would take us. We'd be in the clinics while she was doing her matches and doing her clinics. I grew up in Bonita Springs, Florida. Later moved to Naples, Florida, and then eventually found myself in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where I live now. When I was 13, I moved to Raleigh. But yeah, Mom bet me $100. I couldn't beat her when I was like 9 years old, and I could beat her in about every other sport at that time, but I could not beat her in tennis. And I said, "Does this bet have an expiration?" And she said, "No." So I started getting private lessons and taking it more seriously. And I was able to, about 2 years later, I was able to beat her when I was 11. She's like a 3.5, 4.0 player. Give you some context. And I, of course, spent that $100 on a new racket because by that time I was obsessed with tennis. And Mom and I still play all the time today. It's a family affair. My whole family plays tennis together, and it's a lot of fun. But fast forwarding, when I moved to Raleigh, I was going to play college tennis, right? I wanted to play college and see how far I could go playing. It was an academy at Raleigh Racket Club at the time. I had a great private coach in Florida who trained me for 4 years before moving to North Carolina. His name was Paul Bakken. He played for UCLA, and he coached some players such as, I know he had worked with like Jesse Witten. A lot of people know him in Florida. But I know Jesse's had several coaches, of course. But anyway, Paul was a huge influence on my life. He's one reason I think I fell in love with coaching. He was one of my best friends. He was a mentor. He would, pick me up from school. We'd go to the court. We'd go to travel to tournaments together. I really enjoyed my time on court with Paul. And when I moved to Raleigh, kept in touch with him, of course, but I just joined an academy and didn't have a dedicated coach besides Paul. And I was loving it. And then when I was about 16, my father let us know that he was no longer had a job. And all of my support financially for my tennis dreams were now gone. So I wasn't quite good enough to get any kind of scholarship or any kind of support. At least I didn't know of any. So I pretty much was like, well, what do I do now? I still applied for college scholarships later, and I got some offers for half rides at some smaller schools. But anyway, I just turned to coaching. Fell in love with coaching. Started coaching at a 2-court facility called Black Horse Run in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that was in 2005. And we still have that club running programs year-round as part of TennisBloc today.
with backing up. That's going way back. That's a pretty part of the world near Naples, Florida. With
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, you can play clay courts on the public courts down there.
Yeah, I've been to Naples so many times with Jesse Witten. He went on. I know he played at Kentucky, but I remember seeing him in juniors, and he would just lull people to sleep because people would think that he was, even tanking because of his style, the way he carried himself in between points. Did you watch him play much?
Yeah, we trained together a few times. Well, more so he was on the court next to me, so not together. But yeah, and then I would go see him I'd watch him at the local tournaments when he was in town.
Yeah, no, I coached at juniors, a little bit younger, but I remember him watching him beat Riley DeHart. With, do you remember when Jesse he won like the amateur outing to get a wild card into the qualies? Do you remember that? That's at the U.S. Open.
I think Paul called me and told me about that. I remember a big tournament that he won. I mean, he's a good bit older than me.
Okay, but I had met Paul because I just remember him being at the tournaments and that he coached Jesse Witten, but I never really knew him. But with but Jesse, I believe he played at Kentucky, and there was it fell short. I think they only did it 1 or 2 years, but it was an open tryout among amateurs, and you had to win umpteen matches for a number of months, and then I think that he was the winner, and I think through that he got into the qualies at the U.S. Open. And
he had a really good run.
And he never looked like he was the fittest either. He always looked like he was maybe carrying a little extra weight, especially as he got older. But he could beat people.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Jesse Witten with your mission with TennisBloc. Tell us a little bit about TennisBloc. I mean, it's to make tennis more affordable, more accessible. Tennis is for everyone. I think. Tell us a little bit about the founder, your partner.
Yeah.
Just how the program or the company's grown.
Yeah. And just kind of getting back to where I left off in that last story with the Black Horse Run. So that's kind of how it started. So I was coaching there junior, senior year of high school. And I met Lee Kinchlow, who's my co-founder. And we were coaching together, just summer classes at the 2-court HOA neighborhood. And through my dad losing his job, and then through meeting Lee as well, because Lee came from a blue collar family, never had financial support from his family for tennis. So he was springing rackets at a local club, Seven Oaks, and trying to get tips and watch the pros there teach, and just self-taught guy. And so him and I met, and we quickly saw the barriers to tennis, which many people have seen over the years, right? There's the barriers of sustainable, accessible tennis that's local for programming. And even beyond that, we just saw how much fun it was to have this awesome part-time job at the time where we could really make a difference in people's lives and bring the families together in a really healthy way. And, around that same time, my parents went through a pretty rough divorce, and it made me really want to do something to help families stay together. So I went to seminary school in Wake Forest. Lee went to NC State Business School. And I was going to be a pastor or a youth pastor or something with something in ministry at the time. And I coached tennis all through that, but I felt like I could just do so much more good on the court, and I just loved being on the court. So while I was there, though, and Lee was at business school, we had started an LLC called Best Tennis Raleigh.
I'm sorry, what was it called?
Best Tennis Raleigh.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was our first business. But that was an LLC that I started, and I have no business background. And I made some mistakes for sure, and got us into some tax trouble and some compliance issues that definitely ended the business. So we ended the business, and we created a new LLC. about that time, I actually, to help pay off my business debts, and I think it's an important part of the story because it wasn't instant success by any means, to help pay off, because I had about 15 grand in debt. Even though we were doing well, I had done some things that I needed to remedy. So I went to go work for at Sapphire Valley Country Club in the mountains in Sapphire Valley, North Carolina. Beautiful place. Worked under Kevin Moyer, former ATP pro out of South Africa. And Kevin was awesome. The club I worked at, they gave me a place to live, paid for all my meals, and I got to work full time, 6 days a week. A lot of court maintenance, a lot of lessons. And then they let me bartend at the club at the night. So I was working like 70, 80 hours a week. And just for those 6 months, I was able to completely bounce back, pay off all my debt. And then I moved back to Raleigh to start the new LLC with Lee. And we called it New Era Tennis. And New Era Tennis was awesome. And we, had built a website and, had a great marketing promo video. And then a lawyer called us and they said, hey, you guys are infringing on a copyright. New Era is owned by Nike. You cannot call your business this or we will take you to court. And so okay, good to know. So then we rebranded again as TennisBloc. And we made sure we got a lawyer this time to cover our bases. And TennisBloc, just like New Era Tennis, they had the same goal, similar to Best Tennis Raleigh. But this time, when our first LLC, Best Tennis Raleigh, was obviously just small, going to be Raleigh. When we made our second and third LLC, we knew that we had bigger dreams. We had our sights set on, statewide, and if that went well, take it as far as we can. So the name New Era Tennis, and then became TennisBloc for the program right down the block. And NC State professor of Lee, who was also his mentor, our co-founder, said, you guys should put your tennis business into our business accelerator program. And it's kind of like Shark Tank, if you've seen that show.
Yeah.
Anyone from NC State can put their business in, who's with either a student or has graduated within the last 5 years, can enter their business into the contest. And they'll pick 3 startups out of all of them. And we got chosen, which was awesome. So what that did was it helped us give us some seed funding, and also a ton of mentorship from local business owners. And basically it's like a college class for 3 months. So they mentor you and you go through a whole program. And it was awesome. That really helped us a lot too. By that time, we were already running about 15 locations. After that program, I think we're up to around 35, about a year from that. And then what catapulted us was we also brought on a sales team. But by sales team, I mean one guy who's a good friend of mine named Eric. And Eric is now the director of the sports club in Greenville, but he worked for us for 2 years. And he grew our company by 75% in those 2 years.
Whoa.
So he went after it.
Wow.
And that was an explosion of growth that we were not counting on, but we were super thrilled to have. And ever since then, we have been just learning how to manage that much growth in that short period of time. And it's been a lot of fun. We brought on a whole management team and so forth. But just getting back to the point is, we just saw, we try to identify the barrier, the different difficulties that tennis was facing in North Carolina to start with. So we talked to USTA, Community Tennis Association reps all across the state. We talked to, USTA North Carolina. We talked to local club owners, HOA, so, customer discovery, if you will. And we wanted to see how did we fix their problems, right? And one of the biggest things that we saw that we could help was technology. a lot of these places didn't have technology, and we wanted to fix that. By technology, I mean registration software, communication software that allows you to communicate rain cancellations. Just an all-in-one system so that you don't have to use different third parties to manage. And so we saw that technology was a big one for sustainability, also for management, of course, especially if you're going to manage a bunch of locations spread out of all over the place. You're going to have some HR software to do scheduling and payroll. So, and then the marketing aspect. My partner's really good at marketing. He's got a degree, minor in marketing, and he's just saved us so much money by doing effective email marketing and social media marketing, and equipping a lot of these places that aren't necessarily equipped to do that kind of marketing. So maybe they have the customer base, maybe they have the platform, but they don't have like the graphics or the different things that they would need to be really effective with their marketing. So we're like, okay, so we can hit all the issues with, they need the technology for enrollment, they need the marketing, and they need the staff, because these locations are not going to be a full-time job for any coach. So they might get a coach in there that's, doing it for a season, doing it maybe for a year or two. But when that coach leaves, he leaves a gap. And then who's going to be there to hire the next coach, make sure he's qualified, get him connected with all the students? It's just the transition periods was killing programs in all these different places that we saw. So we're like, okay, so a management company would solve a lot of these things. Can we do this? Let's see what we can do. And that's what we did. And it seems like it's going really well. So I hope that was a good answer to your question there.
Yeah, it was a great answer.
A few things, and jump in, Yvonne. So you and Lee he started coaching in high school as well?
He did, yeah. I was actually his high school coach, even though I was hired at 17 years old to be the varsity coach of a private school here, and he was 16. So we were like the same age. But the athletic director at that school, it's Trinity Academy of Raleigh. So the athletic director and I were really good friends, and I had gone there 1 year when I was in 8th grade. And anyway, he was like, you're a great player. I know you. Yeah, sure. Take the bus at 17 years old and drive the kids to the matches. That's fine. And I was like, all right. And it was a really good experience. But that's how Lee and I first connected, was through high school tennis.
On an article I read, you grew little by little, bootstrapped on. So there was no major investment. You did it the hard way, the role of starving artist. Did you teach you and Lee while you were it was just a summertime thing initially when you were both in school, or did you continue teaching when you were in college?
Yeah, so in high school, I was mainly just teaching during the summertime.
Yeah.
The summer program. That was my first job as a coach. And then during the school year of high school, that's when I was coaching the private schools program. And then on the weekends, I would coach at that small community. So yeah, I was coaching all through high school, and Lee was either playing on the team or he was helping me coach. And yeah, we bootstrapped everything. The only investment we've ever taken was the $10,000 NC State gave us, but that was in 2017. So, the company had been rolling along for years before that. And yeah, I mean, most of the coaching came from me and Lee in the beginning of the business. And we didn't pay ourselves a salary. We didn't pay ourselves a salary for the first 5 years of coaching. We would just pay ourselves for the coaching hours that we did.
Jackson, was that the MBA program at NC State?
It's called the Chip Andrews Business Accelerator Program.
And they actually gave you $10,000.
They did. Yeah. After we completed the program there, they do that every year for 3 businesses that compete. Yeah.
That reminds me of one time, just backtracking. I was in Tampa 15 years, and USF, University of South Florida, their MBA program, you could submit a proposal, be selected, and they would give you free advice. And I remember the The person I was working with at the time said we should do this, but we ended up not doing it. That was, I'm sure, a blunder. Blunder is probably a better word than mistake. That was a blunder. But and then also flattering. At one point, they still haven't built an indoor center. Texas A&M, Steve Denton, they wanted to build an indoor center and have a learning center. And then I was asked to submit a proposal. I went out there 2 different times, and it was through their MBA program. But it got to the point where I was accepted, but I would have had to pay them a substantial fee for them just to make a study of it.
Wow.
It's pretty interesting on seeking advice. But so, what was their advice? If you reflect more upon that, what did they tell you when they selected you? Then what was the coaching?
Oh yeah, good question. So the advice at this time, I should also bring in that we had a third owner join the company. When we were doing our customer discovery before that, we like I said, we knew we needed technology. Well, Lee and I we didn't have any money. We didn't have any investment. The first year in our company, we made $15,000 in the year. That was it. So of course, Lee and I are working two or three other jobs. I was working as a bartender. I was doing any kind of odd jobs I could. Lee was doing all kinds of things. I know he was working for a marketing firm, third shift, graveyard shift. But yeah, we both held basically, full-time jobs and did the business the first year. And we just knew we needed technology, and we had no idea, so we contracted out. We interviewed a couple technology companies, software companies, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we can build this for you, for a couple $100,000.
Wow.
And we were like, "What? We don't have that kind of money." And we didn't. So luckily, Lee had grown up across the street from a guy named Grant Yenser. And Grant was at the university, had just graduated from the University of Baylor, and with a software databasing engineering degree, and agreed to come work for us for a very small salary and 15% of the company. And we said, let's do it. So we joined him. We gave him a part ownership of the company, and he built all of our infrastructure over several years. And a lot of our success is definitely because of him and his contribution to our mission. So I just wanted to add that in there because all these things played a huge role in our success early on with the bootstrapping question. By the time we got to the Business Accelerator program, we had already had a lot of software. We had the website. We already had 25, I would say, contracts, clients, if you will, locations. And then when we got there, they did help us a lot. I mean, there was a lot of good things. They helped us with our organization and our procedures, developing how the owners would communicate goals, how to set goals, how to identify rocks in your business that you need to overcome, how to set up plans on how to overcome those rocks, how to prioritize, different tasks and goals. Those were all things that I think really helped us the most. Also, getting us connected with other business owners who had done it, right? Who had made it. And they grilled us, that we had to open up everything. We had to open up our financials. We had to open up our procedures. We had to open up everything about how we communicate to customers. And, what we found out when we knew we would is we needed a lot of work in order to scale. So they helped us prepare to scale. I would say that was the other main thing is, yes, you guys are doing it now, but what about down the road when you've got all these different locations and all this growth? How are you going to manage that? And for someone that's never been there, I didn't know how to answer that. I would, my goal is, hey, I will work as hard as it takes to figure it out. That's always been our, me and Lee and Grant, we've always shared that. We will just put in the time and hustle it out. But having them there really helped set us up for that growth, and helped us plan for that growth. And I think that was the main takeaway.
With your sites and the number of instructors, I'm going to guess that you're 100 plus in both, have more than 100 sites and more than 100 instructors.
Yeah. So right now on the payroll, just with the coaches, we have 135 coaches.
Wow. I'm saying wow quite a bit.
We have about 150 locations that we service. So, and not to obviously brag, but just to give you an idea, like I said, the first year we made 15,000. Last year we popped some champagne because we hit $1 million in a year in revenue, which was so humbling and so amazing. Of course, that's just revenue. That's not profit by any means. But it was it was a huge milestone for us. So really excited about that.
Then you're coming up to 2025, so almost 20 years. It's some blood, sweat, and tears. Tell us about the sites, the neighborhoods, clubs, schools, and you're just across North Carolina. You're in South Carolina. Tell us a bit about the scope.
Sure. Yeah. So we are our biggest areas that we serve are the Triangle and the Charlotte Metro. Those are our biggest areas. So we have our schedule and regions divided up into Triangle, Charlotte Metro, and then we call it expansion. But expansion is all over the place. So we are in all the way to the East Coast in towns like Wilmington, Swansboro, New Bern, and that's kind of north, right? And then southeast North Carolina, we are in Southport, Holden Beach, Boiling Springs Lake, and then going south from there into South Carolina, we're in Charleston. Central South Carolina, we're in like Camden area. We only have about 5 or 6 healthy locations in South Carolina, so that is part of the next move. We do have places in the Western Carolina, such as Seneca. But we want to definitely target Myrtle Beach. We want to go up, and one of the biggest focus is going to be going up and down the coast. There's so many pickleball and tennis. I know this is mostly about tennis, but pickleball is easy to piggyback off of because it's growing so fast. There's just so many new places popping up with courts and new development. You see all this new building. So now developers are really thinking about adding tennis court and pickleball to their communities and as an amenity. So there's so much room for growth now. But going back to what we are in, as far as the location, it's also in Asheville area, Blowing Rock, Mill Spring. I obviously have a lot of locations, but that gives you the idea. We're all the way from the western part of the state, North Carolina, to the eastern, in North Carolina and South Carolina. But South Carolina only has about like 5 or 6 healthy locations, whereas the other 100-something is in North Carolina.
And you've had to put the brakes on a little bit because of the growth?
We did.
You've had to slow it down?
We definitely did. We definitely had to put the brakes on. Even though we thought we were ready for scale, we were as ready as we could be. But when it comes to scaling with no investment and not a whole lot of reserves, that was a challenge. So what happened was, we got the sales guy in there who's a rock star. We said, grow. We want your goal is to grow the company by 15 to 25% year over year. Well, when he starts growing the company by 75% in a year, that was a lot, because when you get a contract, that doesn't equal money. That is a commission. Now you have to pay the sales team, to Eric. And then now we have to, of course, get the students in at these new contracts. And before we could hire regional directors in a lot of these places, we have to get the programs up and running. So that was me traveling around the state all the time, meeting the location, meeting the coaches, making sure the coaches were qualified, and getting those programs off the ground. So we made it. We made it through a lot of hard work. And now, after the first year of getting those programs off the ground, it allowed us to have the revenue to be able to hire, regional directors that can assist in the management of all of it. So that's been really good. So now we have a regional director in the Triangle area, our guy, Ryan Fleming, which is how we met Steve. Just a tremendous person all around, great player, incredible manager. I've learned a lot from him. He works for me, but I learn from him every day. So many things. And he's also fixed my serve, which has been awesome. But we got, and then we hired our regional manager for Charlotte, actually very recently. And he has been working for us as a coach for 3 years. And we moved him up slowly into admin role and last year. And now he's going to take on this regional director role. So that's been really cool to see our company be able to take a coach, train them up, and turn them into a regional manager. The next goal is to do the same thing in these other areas. We want to get to around 60 locations in a geographical area within 2 hours drive from the center radius, max. And that supports a salary administrator, if you will. And that's a really important part of our model. We're not just trying to run all these things from Raleigh. No, we're not trying to franchise out like other companies have done. We're trying to keep the true essence and meaning and heart and mission of our company, intact, and put these managers there that really, feel the same passion that me and Lee and Grant first had, and then do that same thing, because it definitely has gotten too big for me to do alone. So I'm so happy to find these people to keep the mission going in these places. But anyway, hopefully I answered your question there.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. So when you refer to the triangle, that's Raleigh, basically. How do
Chapel Hill, Durham, Cary, Apex. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you find tennis courts? Years ago, I'll tell you this. I've been doing this 50 years now. One of my students called his company Tennis to Go. And how did he find out where the private tennis courts were? Is he paid a pilot to photograph from up above. Because a lot of times private tennis courts are hidden. And another way to find out where tennis courts are was going through tennis companies that will refurbish a clay court or resurface a hard court. How do you find out what communities, what HOA communities have courts, what neighborhoods, what schools? How do you go about that? In greater Raleigh, how many tennis courts there are, how many private courts, how many public courts? How do you do your homework in that area?
Oh yeah, I can't tell you that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm happy to share that information. So at first it was, a lot of it, it's just using search engines, believe it or not. So at first, there's several different databases that have that information. And the USTA has a list of a big list. Will they share that with you? Not always, not usually, but they will share some with you. And so partnering with the USTA was a big push for us. And we have incredible support from USTA North Carolina, NC Tennis. Kelly Gaines is president of that. And for example, they refer people to us. So a place called Eden, North Carolina recently, was referred to us, and the Community Tennis Association president called us this week and was like, listen, I got 24 tennis courts here I need your help with. We've got a YMCA, we've got a Parks and Rec, we have a high school. They all want programming, and you sound like the CTA president's dream. Do you really do what you say you do? And I was like, of course. She's like, so you'll manage it, staff it, give equipment, and we don't have to pay you anything? And I was like, yes, we'll pay you. And they were like, oh, that sounds amazing. So that kind of thing was really helpful for getting leads. a lot of referrals because, of course, they want to see tennis grow. We kind of are the management people to do it. But beyond that, to answer your question, we would use, besides using databases, we use Google Satellite. And we would go and look at the Google Satellite images and just start scanning every single inch of the state and look for tennis courts, as silly as that sounds. But that's what we did. And we found a ton of tennis courts that way.
And Jackson, your tennis courts, they're either a community court or a public court that for participants, it doesn't require membership. Or do you have some facilities that require membership?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our clients too, they're parks and recs, right? So that's a big one. And then they're HOAs. So, we Google tennis courts, we try to find them. We talk to parks and recs, and we do go to conventions, especially with parks and rec directors. And a lot of it's just emailing too, Steve. We just do we email HOAs, property managers, apartment complexes, you name it. It's a ton of, just grassroots cold calling sales, and just hammering away until you can find that decision maker who's willing to talk to you. That was a lot of it. But actually, I'm sorry, what was your question, Steve?
Well, just securing courts, how do you find out where the courts are?
Oh.
And you just said the decision makers, who do you talk to?
Yeah. So good question. So yeah, some of our clubs are private clubs, that are members only, but that's only 2% of our clubs. Most of the clubs, our mission is to make it more inclusive and affordable and accessible. So members only clubs don't fit that model perfectly, but of course we will still serve that community if it makes sense. But most of what we do is, so let's take Greystone, for example, Greystone Swim and Racket Club. They are a private club. HOA, partly supported by HOA and partly supported by non-HOA members. So it's a dual, and that we see that a lot, where there's a developer created a property and had a club that was like HOA, and then the HOA breaks away and becomes its own. The club breaks away and becomes its own entity. That is governed by a board, like a 501(c) nonprofit. And that is partially supported by HOA, partially supported by, just like I said, membership payment. So that place, for example, we do programming there, and we open it members or HOA members. They get in for cheaper than non-members. So we have like a non-member fee that we can attach custom to each program. And a lot of these places, if they didn't allow non-members in, then it would be hard to get a program going, right? So the members want a program, they don't have the numbers. They allow non-members in, it generates more revenue for the community as well. And that is generally our model, is a revenue share model. So we do rent facilities some, but most of the facilities we work with, we don't want to take a big risk for one thing, and the risk being paying up front for court time that we can't necessarily utilize if we don't have the registration numbers. So our preferred way is to do a revenue share. We run a class, we run a program, and we give them a percentage of what we earn. But then there's plenty of clients, they could care less about what kind of revenue they generate. They just want to have a professional service being offered to their community. And they will just let us use the courts without any charge. So yeah, that's generally what we do. We have parks and recs, HOA clubs. Our three biggest clients are like community clubs that don't have any kind of salary or any kind of means of paying a full-time or part-time staff coach, right? They don't have the money for that. So they're not paying us. We're usually paying them. And then of course, parks and recs, and then schools, elementary, middle schools, public schools, private schools. And we do after school programs there in the gyms, usually in the gymnasiums, or any surface that we can set up pop-up nets. We'll do classes at the schools.
So parking lots, anywhere.
Parking lots. And I heard you're a big fan. You and I have talked, and you teach tennis in the hallways. I've heard you always one of your biggest things is showing places how to utilize the space they have for teaching.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that was cool.
Got to practice before practice, practice after practice. In some schools, like say a public high school, maybe you can only use the courts in the summertime. Is that the case?
Yeah. So we only run our school programs during the school year. Excuse me.
And
not in the summertime.
Not in the summer.
Because unless the school has tennis courts, but almost all the schools that we work at, they don't have tennis courts. We're doing it in non-traditional means, but we're also working with middle and elementary schools. We're not working with schools that have tennis teams usually, like high schools that compete against other high schools that have their own tennis courts. That hasn't been a model that we've approached yet.
With pickleball growing so fast, we're waving the flag that tennis skills transfer into pickleball skills. A ready position is a ready position, and coordination, hand-eye coordination, striking a tennis ball. I love how Sam Query said it's 90% the same. With pickleball, there's 10% more to learn. And right now, the best pickleball players in the world are former tennis players. How is that mixing with? You started off as tennis. How's that mixing with your sites and your instructors?
Oh, fantastic! So when pickleball, funny story, right? When I told you I went to go work in Sapphire Valley with Kevin, I get there and Kevin was like, "Oh, by the way," that's my Australian accent. I'll stop, South African accent. He said, "You're going to be the pickleball pro and the assistant croquet pro." That was the first time I said, "What is pickleball?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to fly somebody here that I am good friends with who lives in Raleigh." I was like, "Well, that's where I'm from." He goes, "Yeah, he's the ambassador for pickleball in North Carolina. His name is Joe Borelli, and we're going to fly him here, and he's going to teach you how to become a pickleball pro." I was like, "Okay." So that was my first experience as a tennis pro, now being thrust into a club environment where I'm supposed to be an expert on a sport I'd never heard of. And it did transfer well, as to your point. It transferred very well. I loved it. It was so much fun. It kind of opened the door for a lot of people that were intimidated by the athleticism of tennis or the physical demands of tennis. It opened the door for them to give a sport a try. Of course, we're talking more about the older generation here. And at the club I was at, that was the primary audience, was the older generation, 60 plus. And it was really successful. Well, when I saw how successful pickleball could be and to complement my tennis business at the club, when I came back to work on TennisBloc, pickleball was on our radar. And once we saw how fast it was growing, and then also our clients just naturally were like, "By the way, do you guys know anything about pickleball? Because people want pickleball apparently, and we don't want to hire somebody else to do pickleball." And so our clients wanted it. We enjoyed it. So we said, "Okay, let's add pickleball to our business." Of course, then at that point, it was too late to change our name. So now it's a little confusing that we offer pickleball, but pickleball has rapidly become actually 40% of our registration.
Oh, wow.
Which is insane. Yeah. So in the last 3 years, pickleball registration has just skyrocketed to about 40%. So we are really excited about that. We have several clubs that are pickleball only. We don't do any tennis there. But as the sport has grown, generally we do hire pickleball dedicated coaches, but some of our tennis coaches want to learn how to do pickleball, and we get them certified and we train them up and we have them go through our classes. But in most instances now that the sport has been growing, we have dedicated pickleball people that are playing pickleball tournaments, they're pickleball certified, and so forth. So in the early stages, we just told our tennis coaches, "Hey, you're coaching pickleball now. We're going to teach you how to do it." And that worked great. but now that competition has really risen, we can't do that as much anymore because there's too many good pickleball coaches out there. So now we've had to invest more into our pickleball. We have a great curriculum. I think our lesson plans really stand out. And just our consistency and, our equipment, and our format. But anyway, it's a good question there.
Jackson, pickleball predominantly played by adults or juniors are signing up?
Yeah. So right now, if you look at our registration numbers, juniors are very low. We probably have like 50 junior pickleball players out of all of our locations. That's nothing. We probably have 5,000 adults, right? So we keep trying to push junior pickleball every season. Over the last year, we started with just adults. Now we've added junior pickleball. And this next year will be the first year that we offer pickleball at all of our schools. So we've only been doing tennis at our schools, but now we're offering pickleball in addition to tennis. So we are trying, because we know that it's there, the desire's there, but the signups still haven't been super strong. But like, for example, here in Chapel Hill, they just started a pickleball league for the kids. I think that a big part of it's going to be, the pro pickleball getting more popular, and then high schools and colleges starting to offer pickleball. And it's just going to take time for kids to see that as a sport they want to invest in at a younger age so that they can play it in high school or college, I think. But yeah, it's definitely growing in popularity, but we're not seeing that a ton as of now, but we are ready and hoping to be on the forefront of that as it develops.
Yeah, as much as us tennis folk love to bash on pickleball, we got to admit it does get people out of their chairs, out of their homes, into doing some sort of activity. I think the fact that it's not as popular with the juniors as it is from other sports, you can attribute that to what you said, how it might get more popular when the pros start becoming more out there and more well known, because juniors tend to pick a sport where it's like, oh, I love this sports figure like LeBron James. Let me play basketball, or Michael Phelps. Let me go swim. Roger Federer. Let me go play tennis. You don't really have that name yet out in the pickleball, so it's hard to attract those junior players like you mentioned. Whereas for adult players, they're really seeing it as an opportunity to get easier exercise and more of a social gathering.
Yeah, and I think too, there's a tradition too behind it, right? There's, until the demand's there for the kids, if there's not money to be made, so quote unquote, we might not see a lot of programs for juniors popping up. Whereas, junior programs for tennis, that's a no brainer. There's plenty of people to pull from. So like, it's risky for someone to try to start really investing their time and money into developing junior pickleball when the demand is unsure. I think that's part of it. I also think a lot of the pickleball pros, if you will, are older retired folks. They don't necessarily, now that I am not saying this across the board, because I have plenty of retired coaches that love working with kids. That is their driving force. But I would say majority, they don't want to work with the 5 and 6 year olds. They want to work with the adults. So I think that's part of it, is the type of coaches that are out there. And then also, like I said, the type of opportunities. There's like no leagues available. There's no team pickleball leagues hardly available at all. It's starting to come on. But that needs to grow as well. And, I go play pickleball. I played last night at the community center. When it rains, I don't have indoor tennis courts here in Raleigh. There's only like one indoor place, right? You got to pay big bucks. So when it rains, if I can't play tennis, I'm going to go play pickleball. So I was out last night, and there were no kids there last night. But if I go out to the public parks when it's not raining, there is a ton of high school kids. But I very rarely see young kids out there, and it'd be intimidating for the young kids because the courts are so in demand that you've got, here in Raleigh, for example, you've got at least 50 people waiting on the sidelines to jump in the next game. and they're all adults. So like the environment's not super conducive because you can't rent pickleball courts unless you're part of a private club in anywhere in the city, at least in Raleigh. So I think like there's also the aspect of we don't want to share our court time with the kids, you know? And even so, other adults, they don't want to share their court time with beginners. That's been a big thing with pickleball too, is a lot of beginners, the intermediate players, I think sign up for our classes so that they can have a dedicated time to come play for nonstop for an hour, where they don't have to go compete at these courts where they're basically playing open play and they don't know who they're going to play against. And, you know, they're waiting in the sideline and then they might be intimidated by the level of skill they're seeing. I mean, we hear a lot of that. So it's just a fun, interesting dynamic that we're seeing around pickleball.
Let me ask a question about yesterday. So it rains. I'm just confused. To clarify, if it rains on a hard court and you can go out and play on the pickleball court next to it? I mean,
thanks for clarifying. No, well, in Raleigh anyway, there's a lot of places that offer indoor pickleball.
Indoor pickleball. I see.
Yeah, so in Raleigh, I pay $10 every 3 months, and I can play indoor pickleball every night of the week at a local park.
In a lot of places, I know you organized a workshop that we conducted in Charlotte. That was at a pickleball when it rained, pickleball facility. So a lot of buildings, we talked about that on a previous podcast. So the ceiling doesn't have to be so high to convert one building into pickleball, correct? Like it can't be converted into tennis.
Right. You know, and I think one big, I always say this, and I love bringing this up, the comparison between the sports, right? I think one of the reasons it's growing so fast is because of the length of the game. You can play a game in 20 minutes or 10, and you can rapidly play games. And so it's kind of set up in such a way that people want to go out to like these open play events. Imagine us doing an open play event for tennis. If people had to wait for a court and they were going to play a full match, they'd be waiting for 2 hours, right? Like, or an hour and a half. It's almost like I would love to see what pickleball has done, like for tennis somehow. And I don't know how that would look, but it's almost like, yeah, we have a pickleball court and you play a shortened, fast four tennis or something like that and get the people out there. But anyway, that's a separate conversation. But I just see the differences in why it's growing versus, because I want that for tennis, but there's no place where I could just go play open play tennis in Raleigh where I can do that any night of the week for pickleball. But they don't have that for tennis. And I wish they did, and that's always something I thought would be cool to start. But anyway, that's a separate conversation.
So would this be true that pickleball, it just works much better for drop-in play? I mean,
yeah.
they certainly have in tennis drop-in clinics, but to just drop-in play. So my understanding of pickleball is, it's almost like the person at a pub puts their quarter on a pool table. And, you go to a park and they're playing 3-on-3 basketball. You just sit and wait and you get your turn. But as you're saying, you don't have to wait very long. Isn't it pretty casual? They only play like to 11?
Yeah, it's very casual. And they have, so like the place I went to last night, for example, they have a sign-up sheet that the city provides. You just write your name. And I'm only waiting 5 to 10 minutes in between games. So I'm playing for 90% of the time. At the public park, at other places, they have like a paddle system. Where you put your paddle in and, it's like called Next Up. But anyway, they have like a whole culture and system built around just open play, quickly playing games. And I think that, it'd be awesome to see that for tennis. There's just also at pickleball too, like in tennis, if you go play with somebody that the skill difference is wide, you're going to feel bad and it's not going to be fun for anybody. In pickleball, you can still, it's only going to last for 10, 15 minutes and then it'll be over. So you can kind of have fun and at least enjoy the social aspect of the time on the court, and then know it's going to be over, whereas tennis is like, am I really going to be just acing this person for 30 minutes or an hour and then, no one's having fun. So I think there's that aspect as well.
I think one thought turning into a question is if tennis teaching was more unified, then I think we could ride on the coattails of the growth of pickleball. In other words, if all the tennis teachers agreed, okay, this is the ready position. This is how you basically hit a forehand volley. This is how you basically hit a forehand ground stroke. And then then if say someone were to come out to TennisBloc and they're going to be taught both pickleball and tennis at the same time. I mean, I don't know much about pickleball, but I've watched it played for some time now. I went to a clinic one time. We had a podcast with one of our former students who's big time winner now in the money circle, Rachel Rohrbacher. But I think it'd be great if people were to come out and say, okay, here's my 7, 8-year-old child, and teach them to play both. When I see people put a ball in play, I go back to being a table tennis, a ping pong player who I found out that I wasn't any good. It took me a while. A quick story is that I won this little village tournament. And the only reason I won it is a couple of people that were better than me were teenage boys chasing teenage girls. So they didn't play in the tournament. So I had older brothers who could spot me 10 points. My mother had a friend who was my 8th grade teacher. She could beat me. My mother had a coworker whose husband, I couldn't even return his serve. But I was at a Harlem Globetrotters basketball game. It was back in 1968. Richard Nixon, dating myself, I'm an old guy. Richard Nixon was working on relations with China. So during the halftime of the basketball game, these 2 table tennis players from China came out, and I knew from that moment forth, I cannot play table tennis.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I played like Forrest Gump. Just in fact, I didn't have a forehand. I would just hit all backhands. But anyway, I think that Vic Braden said that about tennis. People think it's like ping pong because people can play, what I call basement ping pong, where they just bat the ball back and forth. So there are many, many different levels. But I just think that we were unified. So when I see someone put a ball in play, it looks like they're just dropping in a forehand. But up here at the resort, I know you've been up here to Wintergreen.
I love it.
As Jan Tiriak would say, the umpires in Florida, you have to be between 65 and dead. Now I'm at that age. So the pickleball players up here at Wintergreen are between 65 and dead. So they're old people, but it looks like give them a fly swatter. I mean, they're having some fun, which is great. What Yvonne said, get them off the couch and get on the court. So I'm not belittling that. But when someone comes out to TennisBloc, I think right now, if you can't beat them, join them. And with tennis, it's like, okay, let's show you how to play both sports at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that. And so one of the kind of the questions that's coming out of there in my mind is, hey, Jackson, how has TennisBloc promoted both sports? Even if one person comes into pickleball, do you try to, do they convert to tennis playing both? And I would say it doesn't happen super often, but that has been one cool thing is we are able to target that market. So, I think when pickleball players come out, a lot of pickleball players that join our program, they haven't done any sport, maybe their whole life, or they are, haven't done it in a while, and they get comfortable on that court. And a lot of our pickleball is done on a tennis court, with a blended line, or we throw down temporary lines. We don't even have lines. We're putting up a net. We're putting up temporary lines. And it's cool because, sometimes the pickleball class will be going on, and then they'll see the tennis class, and they'll get more comfortable just being in that atmosphere and in that ecosystem, and they will sign up for tennis. They'll be like, oh, okay, well, I could try that. I see that lesson going on. It looks like a lot of fun. And so it has helped provide an avenue into tennis for people that, maybe they went out as a kid or whatever and had dad just pelting balls at them and then getting frustrated because they hit the ball over the fence too many times. You see that happen all the time, and that's it for them. They're done. They're done with tennis. Whereas if they got good instruction like you give, Steve, they could learn that success will take time, but that it's an exciting, fun, development process that you don't have to just go out there and play a match on your first day. That's not how necessarily tennis should be done. Tennis should be done by being taught good technique and enjoying that process of learning that good technique so that you will be able to enjoy the sport to the fullest. I think that's one thing that you've always, you're big on. I think you say, well, I don't want to butcher it, but, you say a lot of the method is is play to learn, and you're more of a learn to play type of a philosophy. And I think that the play to learn is all good and all good, especially for like younger kids that, they do want to be active. They do want to have some kind of fun, but I think that also turns a lot of tennis players off by just going out there and just having no success and thinking that if they don't have that immediate success, then tennis is not for them, So anyway, I went on a soapbox there, but yeah.
A few things with blended lines. If I had a vote, if I was a commissioner of tennis for the day, I think a tennis court should have the blended lines for pickleball. Obviously, the tennis court has the tennis lines, but they're also the 10 and under lines. And then Ed Crass, ghost doubles, one-on-one doubles, cross-court doubles. There should be a blended line that goes all the way down the center of the court. So one-on-one doubles, promoting young players to serve and volley, go forward, and adults can play one-on-one doubles. What's happened with the rackets, the ball travels faster. So I think the blended lines is one thing. So, instead of tennis only, but then to say, okay, the tennis should be the ringleader with all four of those pickleball lines, tennis ball lines, 10 and under lines, and ghost doubles. They all require the same skill set. Yeah. So what can change is the racket can change. Outfit, they're mainly in New England, but it's called spec tennis. And it's off.
Oh yeah, spec tennis.
So it's more of a bridge sport. And if you swing and pickleball really is wiffle ball. You got wiffle ball, softball, and baseball. And how many people end up playing baseball with a hard ball? So people end up playing softball. But I do think that the foam ball doesn't work so well outdoors. But if a ball could be designed to be a little bit better than the red ball. That just doesn't fly. I mean, the red ball I think is for activity classes. The orange ball, if adults went out with a foam tennis ball, of course, indoors it works great. It just slows it down. But again, I just think unified. Okay, and the number one flag to wave would be prevention of injury.
Yeah,
playing with the body parts. The orthopedic surgeons, physical therapists are doing quite well with the growth of pickleball.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they are.
Because people they have no clue. The weekend warriors that come out and the way they're swinging, it's not good. It's not good. They're just playing from their lower arm down. The wrist and the elbow are weak joints. And I mean,
100% of our injuries.
And I see pickleball the same way. Of course, I was a neophyte back in the 70s, but when tennis boomed based on James Van Allen inventing the tiebreaker, people were just out hustling dollars. I wouldn't have done that. Just the way I grew up with older brothers. I mean, I would have not been an instant tennis coach. Well, I would start charging money for lessons. But tell us about the challenge of teaching 150 people, not only the management side. I appreciate what you shared as far as technology, and that's a challenge unto itself, just organizing all that. But how about leading and teaching 150 instructors?
Yeah. What's the process of hiring and coaching and finding, especially how do you find 150 different coaches? And is there like a process you go through in hiring, and did it change over time, and is it different for pickleball and tennis coaches?
Oh yeah. Well, that's my area of expertise in the business. Whereas, I am not, just to lay it out, if you wanted to talk about really the business side as far as the financials and a lot of the compliance, you'll have to bring my partner Lee on. He is the business god, right? But I've learned a lot from him over the years. I'm definitely more of the operations and HR. So I make the magic happen every day to day. And we have a sweet partnership because of that. And anyone listening to this, I would say identify your strengths and weaknesses. And if you aren't strong in a certain area, find someone who is and make a sweet partnership out of it. If you guys can align in your passions, because that's the real success of a TennisBloc is that partnership. Like I said, the first job I had, I couldn't do it. The first time I tried to do the company on my own, it failed. Even though I don't think I've changed that much. I don't think I'm doing anything totally different. Well, I'm doing a lot of things differently, but anyway, just having that person that has different strengths and weaknesses on your team is so important. But going into your question, staffing. So with the HR side of things, like I said, I went to a seminary school. We didn't talk about business management. We didn't talk about HR. So I've had to do a lot of learning over the years. I'm part of some HR groups, and I've tried to learn as much as I can, self-taught, reading books, yada yada. But what I've learned. First, you have a couple challenges. One, we can talk about acquiring the staff, and then there's the challenge of keeping the staff, and then there's a challenge, of course, managing the day-to-day with the staff, right? So there's kind of those three aspects there. How do you attract and the talent, right? Especially with what we're paying our coaches, we can't compete with a lot of our competitors when it comes to pay. We just can't. It's not our model. How do we compete is with our culture. That's the biggest thing. Our mission of making tennis and pickleball more affordable and accessible. I was doing all the interviews. Now Ryan and now David, I've trained them on how to do the interviews. What we start with in every interview is how the company got started. We tell the story. We tell the story about how we bootstrapped this thing from day one, and it was never about making money. Still isn't about making money, but money is nice. It would help a lot. But it's about the mission of making the sport more affordable and accessible, and really bringing the community together. And it's got to be about that every day. When I talk to coaches, interviews, that's what we start with. This is about making a difference, not about making a paycheck. And if that's your motivation, I would recommend you go anywhere else but here. Now we will pay well, but we're not going to compete with private clubs and a lot of other organizations out there. So I start with that. Once I explain that culture, then of course, how do I acquire them? How do I get that first conversation? Well, one of the big avenues has been just using recruiting platforms such as Indeed.com. Indeed, fantastic. They really helped me get a lot of active candidates, people that are actively looking for programs. And then I have the passive recruiting. So that's my active recruiting, almost all through Indeed. And then I use USPTR, USPTA, of course, their job posts, and a couple other, sources. But passive recruiting would come from calling local high schools, calling community tennis associations, getting part of the network, right? I try to find the athletic directors of the colleges. Like we have David Secker at NC State. He connects me with the club team presidents at NC State. So I pull from those resources and those network connections to find the staff. And then, so anyway, that's how we find the staff. Usually it's through those connections. And then as far as managing them, right? Well, at first, man, that was tough, right? It was all just, I would make a schedule on a spreadsheet and I would send it out in an email. I would text them, and I would hope they would show up. And then I would say, all right, every 2 weeks, I was like, all right, you guys worked all these days, I see you have 25 hours. Did you work all those 25 hours? They're like, yes. I was like, oh, wait, I saw that it rained on Monday. You didn't work Monday. And they're like, oh, right, I didn't work Monday. I'm like, all right, take that hour off. So you can imagine that was trial and error. That worked for the first couple of years, maybe first 2 years. And then we had to invest in some software. We've been through various softwares, but the one that we've rested on is called Connect Team. And it's just a HR management platform. So I can put all the schedules in, and everyone has an app. So this is not our technology. We did not build this. This is a third party that we use. And it communicates the schedules. It also communicates everything they need to know about the location, right? So I'll have how many tennis courts, Does the tennis court have lines for pickleball? Is there equipment stored there? Are there lights? How the heck do you turn the lights on? Are the courts locked? Are there bathrooms? All that stuff that you don't think about when you just say, hey, go coach from 4:30 to 7:30. You got 3 hours of classes. You got 2 junior classes and an adult class. No, there's more information than they need to know. And that became more and more apparent. So constantly identifying problems and finding solutions when it comes to managing the staff has always been a big one. So we use that, and it communicates their schedule. They can also clock in on their phone, and I get alerts. If they don't clock in, then I know they're not there. I call them, and I make sure that they are there, and I can I have more control and knowledge about what staff are doing, and then I can be more proactive in communicating to the students, which is really helpful. I have so much to say about this. I'll try to keep it concise, but that's really helpful is having the scheduling software and then the time clock management software to record hours, keep everything transparent, not put all the work on me, but put the work on them too, to be responsible for their schedule that I've given them. Also, it allows a lot of other fun tools to help our culture, right? So I can, every time it's their birthday, it sends a notification out to all the staff. Because when you get so spread out, and we don't have an office, we don't have a central club, I want to try to make everyone feel like we're still a family. We're still part of a team. So we do events, and we do fun little social posts where everyone, it's like a little Facebook almost, right, for the coaches. So I'll let coaches post a video of their students like doing a drill. And then other coaches will comment like, oh, I like that drill. Like, have you thought about this? Or, and it creates this like fun TennisBloc community of coaches that they could just vibe off each other, post videos, and it creates a really good atmosphere. And then, like I said, we do events. So we'll do, seasonal tournaments where we'll bring people out, and we'll have like a pickleball and a tennis tournament, and we'll bring pizza, and we'll make a draw, and we all get to hang out and socialize. And those are really fun. And then we'll have people like Steve Smith come in and do trainings, and we'll get everybody to come and do trainings. And that's another way that they feel very invested in, because we're constantly trying to, give them more avenues to increase their knowledge and skill. We pay for their certifications. That's a big one. So we constantly try to invest in our staff, even though they may only be working 3 hours a week, 1 day a week. But when they see that, like, they have our full support and all these cool opportunities, it definitely keeps them with us for a while. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. That's how I manage it. And then also having good managers underneath me, like Ryan, like David. We have an operations assistant named Walter. Walter is super detail oriented. So he goes through and looks at every single school calendar and makes sure that every single teacher workday is not listed in their schedule. So we put out our schedules a year in advance for every location. We send it off to the clients. They approve it, and then we get it on the schedule. So a lot of planning, a lot of work ahead of time, so that we are always looking out so we can get ahead. Hopefully that answered your question. But I'm sure there may be other questions that you have kind of in regards to that. Feel free to ask.
I think one thing going back to hiring is if someone were just to go to your website, you have a very clean, organized website, and it's right on there if you want to apply and how you go about it.
Yeah, I mean, the technology is the answer to your question in one word: technology. I couldn't do this business 20 years ago. There's no way. Without having my website that allows me to delegate tasks and of like communication, like we have a customer service person who's on the phone, who's on the email. So we get, no one's going to go more than 24 hours without getting a response. And funny story, the customer service person was the athletic director that hired me to coach Lee's team 20 years ago. So he now is our customer service representative. So anyway, but yeah, we have the tools allow me to delegate tasks of customer service, of weather cancellations. I mean, I used to have to be on call 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day of the week in case something were to rain. I'd have to be on the computer emailing out cancellations. But now I can hire college students, train them up, and they can monitor our coach hotline we have. Any coach has a weather problem, or they're running late, or they get a flat tire, whatever happens, they can text the hotline. There's someone that's always available on the hotline to respond. So it's given me my life back in a lot of ways. Technology has allowed us to manage all these things in a really clean, seamless way. It's not always clean, but it's better than it used to be.
The title under your name sums it up: Chief Human Resource Officer, Operations Supervisor. That says quite a bit. Let me go back to this. Don Meyer, our listeners could go, the late Don Meyer, basketball coach, amazing individual, but he used biblical teaching. I would think all your time in the seminary, that education certainly has helped you as a teacher. Why don't you comment on that?
Sure. Well,
you're teaching. Sorry to interrupt, but you're teaching life. I mean, you're always teaching life first.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So how I ended up at the seminary, I wasn't necessarily a believer or, a religious person, whatever you want to call it, for most of my life. But when I was 17, I like to tell the story or 16, 17, I actually had like 4 friends die in a pretty horrible car accident on the way back from our high school basketball game. And that went to 4 funerals that week. And that's kind of what spurred me towards wanting to learn more about what comes next, right after death. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I loved coaching tennis. My dad wanted me to be a politician or a lawyer. I wasn't really interested in that. And I just didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to study philosophy. So I checked out this school. Also, it was one of the only schools I could afford because they said if I went and got baptized, they would give me 50% off tuition. And I said, okay, I'm a Baptist now. I hate to say it like that, but that was a big motivation because I was still figuring it out. And the school, I didn't just go there because of that, though. The school was fantastic. They had a program called the History of Ideas. And it's a really old program that most colleges don't do anymore. Some of the Ivy Leagues do, like Harvard and stuff. But you basically go through 8 semesters of the original texts of all the great thought leaders throughout time. And, most schools, you just read about it in the textbook. But this one, we had to spend a lot of money on textbooks, on original works. But, we start with like the ancient Greeks. I didn't want to go to a school where all I was taught was one viewpoint. I wanted to be exposed in a seminar conversation teaching where my beliefs were challenged heavily and strongly, and that's what this school did. So even though all the teachers very strongly believed in their viewpoint, they always played devil's advocate in the classroom, where they would try to just destroy your foundational beliefs about what you view of reality, and then build you back up, right? Build you back up by giving you answers to the questions that they were asking that you could not answer. I thought Jesus' last name was Christ when I went to college. That's how little I knew. And just going through that anyway, I really learned a lot about myself. It made me much more confident as a person, and it made me, it really helped. But then beyond that, that was kind of my motivation for studying philosophy. But there was a ton of awesome classes, like counseling classes and family ministry, and there's just all these other awesome classes that in a lot of ways it's how to help people get through difficult times, how to communicate with them, how to also protect yourself legally from getting into a bad situation, which is a lot of HR, right? Because if you're a really nice person, you give that kid a ride home from tennis, and you could be looking at a serious lawsuit. Just some things are obvious, right? But as a 18-year-old kid, I had a lot to learn. yeah, those things definitely helped me. But beyond that, the people I met there really cared about the students. And they, I was a pretty wild guy. To be honest, I was pretty wild. I definitely pushed the boundaries in a lot of my life, and I needed some older mentors, for sure, to help guide me, and to show me a better way, of living my life. And I feel like above all else, it created such a positive environment for me. Also, a lot of the students there were so poor. They're living with their family in a studio apartment. One of them sleeping on the couch, one of them. They just basically lived off of nothing there, and that was really good for me too. I came from money, if you will. My dad's a doctor, but like I said, when I was 16, that all changed, and so I never really. But people who come from money sometimes say they don't care about money. They just don't appreciate it. And I think that was really big for me too. I mean, I didn't have any help in college. I had to work my way through college. I had to pay for my car. I had to pay for my tuition, everything. And I got to meet a lot of other people who were more like that, more like me. And that was really helpful for me to push myself to do the tennis too. For one thing, I was motivated by really trying to do something positive for the world, like everyone around me. And I was not motivated. None of these people were there because they wanted to make $1 million. They were there because they wanted to do something good for the world. And they didn't care how much money they made doing it. I mean, not everybody, but generally that's the kind of people I was surrounded by. And that environment really just spurred me on every day. So anyway.
No, it's a great input, Ivan.
That was good. Thanks for sharing that. That's great.
With one thing I have is on your flyer, it says you work with beginners to intermediates. I just think that the more people study tennis, and the more you understand the facts, it's all the same. We were watching the Italian Open today, and I just don't think, unfortunately, that people can really see how basic the best players in the world hit the ball. And see they do have flaws. They're humans. But the ego problem, when you're working with people on community courts, and the lesson fees are not as high, and you're targeting beginners to intermediates. Don't you think that's a big plus? Don't you think that I know you came to Florida to meet with me. I introduced you to Brandon Flanagan, who's running multiple tennis facilities, and he worked with me as a player, then he worked with me as a coach. He spent, easily a decade, and he has all the video to show how he really worked with these young players in the Delray Beach, Boca Raton area. But there was no loyalty, and then he just got with his partner, got frustrated that they would shop and bop, and new academy around the corner. But don't you think it's more grounded, more humble with working with the players that your 150 instructors work with?
Yeah, great question. I love that question so much. So let me just take one microcosm of that to give an example to answer your question. So we started, our starting point was Raleigh. Our most successful program is in Raleigh. A place called Northford Country Club. But we had kids there starting from ground zero, right? Age like 3 or 4. I gave them a lot of them their first lessons. The other big one is Greystone. The coach at Greystone has been with us for 10 years. He's been there. There's definitely loyalty there. But we have seen there's loyalty for a long time. But when the kids get to that point where they're ready to move up to that academy level, we didn't have anything for them. We haven't had anything for them. So we're fine with, once they get to that point, we tell them, you're ready. head over to the big academy. That's where you need to be. And we think that's great. We feel like we're hitting a niche, and we don't want to hit that niche of competing with these academies necessarily. We're trying to hit a different niche, which is introducing people to tennis, getting them to the point where, as far as kids, if we're talking about kids here, I assume we are, getting them their basics, getting them their foundation, getting them experience doing like junior team tennis, because we do a lot of junior team tennis leagues, and we have a great system for that. And then once they're ready to go beyond that to be a tournament level, academy level player, we say, you've done great. Please go to the academy. But then we don't want them to just leave. We want them to come back and coach with us. And they do. So I'm thinking of 7 kids right now, just off the top of my head. They work for us. And right now, sometimes they only work in the summer because at this point they're in college. But they all come back, and they were in our program since they were like 5 years old, and now they're working with us. I think that's just like a dream come true for me, to see that kind of system. So that to me feels very loyal, and it feels awesome. I know their parents by first name, and all that, even though we're so spread out. And I don't have that kind of relationship outside of Raleigh, to be fair, because this is my home. But some of our coaches have started to develop that. A lot of our coaches have developed that the longer they've been there. But on the flip side, now that we've done really well developing certain areas, we are starting to look at the high performance academies. For example, in the Raleigh area, there's not a ton of options. There used to be a lot more options, but the country clubs have slowly closed their door to non-members or to junior programs, and that has opened a door for there's a need for more academy type players. So we have Ryan Fleming, who we've referenced a few times, who you're very close with. So Ryan's starting our first academy here for the high level player. And it's going to be a 5-day a week, 2-hour a day kind of thing. But so we do want to make those opportunities, but that is certainly not the niche we're really after. We want to introduce the players to the sport, give them a great foundation. Sky's the limit on where they go. But once they get to that point and they outgrow our program, we are also fine with them going off to the academies, and then, like I said, coming to work for us and coaching the next generation. So I think that's our model.
Interesting. Ryan Fleming, certainly I was his teacher, but the way it works as time goes by, I've learned this from Ryan. He was in Chicago, and I went up to train the staff that he was in charge of. And a number of different things. One, he would meet with parents and say that I think your child really should put their energy towards being able to teach the game as well. But I think a lot of times a tennis teacher a coach will just keep milking it, where you want to tell people it's a sport for a lifetime. You can always keep getting better. But if you're a rising senior and you're now with a UTR, and there's a positive with the UTR, it's pretty accurate, especially within a country. People say, well, it varies. If you're, say, your UTR in Florida is a higher level player if you're a 9 in Florida versus a 9 in New England or the Intermountain. But my take on it is it's very accurate. But he would meet with, parents to say, I think your child should put a lot of time into learning how to teach the game, because it can be more than a hobby. It can be a part-time supplemental income. They're going to go off to college, and they can learn to give back. And I think that was something that was great that he did. But I think to hear you say that you have people that come back and work for you, so you have a relationship that doesn't come to an end with your former students. Bud Schultz, who was a guest on our podcast, he got to be 39 in the world, never played a junior tournament. And up in Boston, he owns a tennis club with his wife. And when his junior players, just like you said, they surpass the intermediate level, he sends them elsewhere. What does happen with tournament players is they really become high maintenance. I mean, I tell those, and I on a
That is true.
regular basis, maybe not straight across the board, but for the most part, they get too much. Tournament juniors, they get too much attention. High maintenance versus low maintenance, and too many tennis pros are. If they stop and think about it, they're only catering to like 20 people. They're not.
Right.
They're just. It's almost like they take a subservient role, working with just a small group of players. But more of a shout out for Ryan, for our listeners. We have to get him on as a guest. Another story for Ryan. He came to me at Tennis Elbow. He's, maybe 27 years old to be a guest. And I said, well, we can start right away. You're not in so much pain that we can at least film you, show you how you hit the ball right now, right-handed, and then we'll just go to work having you play left-handed. And he's an excellent athlete, became an excellent player left-handed. I used to tell all these teenage boys that he could beat. I would say that he was, at one point, maybe a 5-5 player with his opposite hand. But, the teenage boys would play him and freak out. I go, he's the same guy. He's the same flexibility, same nutrition, same ability to jump, same mind. He's going to come to the net. But the ego would get in the way. I'm losing to this guy who's playing with his left hand. The questions on your trip to Florida. I have a story within the trip to Florida, but I know you and I went for that walk up Atlantic Ave, and we were coming back, and obviously your intellectual curiosities. You said, Steve, could we? So we walked by the Delray Beach Tennis Center. I mean, two of my former students have been the manager of that place, so there's certainly been some people that I've taught to teach tennis over the years that have worked there and currently work there. But I remember you guys saying, "Hey, could we just go and could you critique this lesson that was being given?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do that. It's actually one of my former students." But I said, "If we do it, we just have to hide under a tree." But why don't you tell us about your trip to Florida and then your connection with Ryan and the GreatBase?
So yeah, how I ended up coming down to, hearing about GreatBase and coming down to meet you, Steve. Ryan had actually applied to work with TennisBloc. I don't even remember what year it was, but he had applied to work with us. He said, "Hey, I think he was teaching at an academy in Brevard at the time, and he was looking to move to like Raleigh to work, and he applied with us, and I made him a job offer, but then he took another job offer. We didn't really have a great salary package, or we didn't really have a great position for him. I said, you can come coach with us. But I didn't have an administrative role for him. So he took the administrative role for a country club nearby. Long story short, that fell through. And him and I met up for lunch, and he shared with me about, his experience, his dream, his goals, and about you, and what he thought he could bring to our company. I shared with him about our company, and we really hit it off. And yeah, he joined the company, and through that conversation, through getting to know him, he showed me your website, and he was like, we could really use a GreatBase to really enhance and unify the curriculum or training processes for our coaches, and try to get all the coaches under teaching the same forehand. We did use videos before, of course. We did have a system, but we weren't necessarily tied to that system if there was a better option out there. So, before pulling the trigger, I started, calling around to people that I respect in his community. I was like, what do you think about this Steve Smith guy? And I'm sure most people, everyone I talked to knew who you were. That's just my fault for not being in the loop as much. And they're like, oh yeah, Steve, yeah, of course, and they all told me good things for the most part. Some of them had some jokes, but most part great. So then I called you, Steve, and I said, hey, can I come visit you? And And you were like, yeah, let's do it. So then I came down to Florida, and we met. Where did we meet? What city was that?
Boynton Beach.
Yeah,
in Delray Beach. To me, it's all the same place. It's all right there. We
spent
spent time in Boynton and Delray.
Yeah, my mother lives in Daytona, and so I went down to Daytona, and it was like a 2-hour drive to over that area. So I was like, oh, I'm going. So yeah, I came over to meet you, and we had a really good. Just for the listeners, we had an awesome time. I would say I was first struck by just your great personality, your humility. One thing I had always heard about Steve Smith from calling around is, Steve's a my way or the highway type of guy. If you have any disagreement with Steve, you might have some conflict. And I only heard that from a couple people, but they weren't saying it was a bad thing. They were just kind of describing. And when I met you, I didn't have that impression at all. I thought you were super down to earth, and you didn't hold yourself on a pedestal. In fact, you kind of kept talking about, one of the things I said, well, how did you become Steve Smith? And you were telling me about that. You also shared with it at our training about you were a student of the game. You really learned from you call them your pillars, I think, standing on the shoulders of giants, and you described how you developed GreatBase, right? And I thought that was really great. And then you also showed me some clubs. We went around. You showed me some of the people that you had partnered with in Florida. I think you mentioned his name earlier. I cannot remember it now, but
yeah, Brandon Flanagan.
Yeah, Brandon. And obviously, Brandon had built a TennisBloc on steroids. Just about. I mean, it was not as big as far as maybe students and landmass, but as far as the what he was managing and the revenue he was generating was intense. It was awesome, and so that was a really cool connection. But then also we were just like in the parking lot walking downtown, and you knew the child that was walking into the tennis court, and you said to him, "Show us your forehand," and he was probably 7 and just did an awesome example of the forehand demonstration, knew all the steps, knew all the right words to say. And I was really impressed by that for sure. And then, and then we just had a great time. We really connected. And then the main thing was you were totally interested in helping what we were doing. And so I was like, okay, well, this is a great fit in a lot of ways. And I was really excited about it. And then, went back to Raleigh, talked to Ryan about it, and you followed up. You weren't just all talk. You were, you're like, yeah, let's schedule a time. Let's do it. I'll come and I'll train your coaches, and I'll give them, we'll work with you guys to find a rate that works for you, for your coaches, and we'll make this happen. And I really appreciated that. And we made it happen. You came, you did a great job, and we've done 2 now, right? 2 in-person conferences over a weekend, one at NC State and one in Charlotte. And they went great feedback. It was awesome. We got good video. And so that's how the story of GreatBase and TennisBloc have partnered. And looking forward to a lot more development in that area.
Yeah, we've enjoyed the workshops, Yvonne. So impressive. The University of Charlotte. I know they don't have indoor courts, but what a beautiful outdoor facility. Wow.
Yeah, love that place.
Charlotte, I mean, it just seems like so much new building is going up. Isn't that still one of the fastest growing cities in America?
Might be. I wouldn't know. It seems like it because all the, we don't have any contracts in Charlotte proper. We have contracts in every little city outside of it, in a complete circle around it. We work with all the parks and recs around it. So that's just funny. It's hard to get into Charlotte, but all the cities around it are growing so fast that there's such a need for the management company.
Coming back to the comment you had heard, my way, the only way, it's dogmatic. It's just one-dimensional. I think people need to take a deep dive into the GreatBase. A lot of times people just they make you hit off a cone. We hear that all the time. Granted, when someone first comes to us, I think, okay, break it down into three parts. Okay, the tennis player from the neck up, tennis player from the neck to the waist, and then from the waist down. And, you need to work on all three areas. And, so, okay, from the neck up, I mean, they have to have the right attitude to make any changes. It's always character first. But people come to us, so we deal with the middle part. When you think about the grips and the swings and what they're doing. We had a gal here yesterday. She's off to go play the 14s at Wimbledon. In fact, she was part of she came to help demonstrate at NC State. And, I think that comes back to, you think about where she is. So we went back and looked at her original film. And Matt Clore, who's from North Carolina, he's in the back, shadow swing, excellent tennis player. And it's the very first day that we met the gal. So, documenting development. And since then, she's won some national titles, represents the United States. And, not too many people get to go to Wimbledon either. It's the second year they're having a 14-under tournament. But when you mentioned the 7-year-old who we just randomly walked into in front of one of the tennis clubs, actually the main tennis club in the Delray Beach Tennis Center. And then we were at NC State. We were there a year ago, and I know you're organizing something for us to go back the 1st of June here in a couple of weeks. So, and Dave Secker was so gracious to host the program. But that 7-year-old, was she or he showed us on the forehand on that given day. It's no different than what Dave Secker's trying to do with his tennis team. Actually, one of his players, she's on the pro tour now, Diana Schneider. She's working with one of our coaches, longtime associate, Andy Fitzel. And it's all the same thing. The tennis court's the same, the laws of physics, gravity. It's just really all the same. But I do think the my way, the only way, is that when you're dealing with someone who tells you they have goals, they have competitive goals. They write down a piece of paper, well, I want to play D1 tennis. And then you start rolling out tennis math, that is, okay, the court's only from the baseline, it's 19.1 degrees wide. Some of those things are just hard facts. And if people don't do a deep dive, and then they'll have that impression that it's not multifaceted. It's again, just one way, cookie cutter. And it's really not that way. Tell us about, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just have something fun to go off that, but also spin it in a positive light. So I was recently, about a couple weeks ago, my fiance and I went up to Colorado, where she's from, and got to hit with her pro. That she played Division II college tennis, and very good player, awesome player. Anyway, her coach, well-respected coach in the Colorado area. I'm not going to say his name or anything, but he was asking me all about. We played a match for fun, and he was asking me about TennisBloc, and I obviously got to where we're partnering with Steve Smith, and he had, so that was where one criticism came from, and I was so interesting because he was like, well, I like Steve, I like what he's doing, but I feel like it's a one way, my way, the highway type of deal. And I said, well, and I stopped him, and I said, well, have you met Steve? Have you talked to Steve? He was like, well, no, but I've sent players to people that are, I don't know what he called them, Steve Smithians or something, nearby.
Disciples. The cult.
And, he said he had to stop sending them there because he would send them there and they would, reconstruct their whole game or whatever like that. But I was like, and that was interesting to me. And I said, well, for one thing, my reply was, well, sure. I'm not saying that Steve's way is the only way. I don't need to say that, but it is a great way for our company, because all these players, that we are working with, they don't have a way. It's not like we're changing necessarily hardly anything. A lot of these players are brand new players, and they are, they need a solid system. And we're getting coaches that aren't necessarily experienced coaches. A lot of them are entry-level coaches. They might be great players, but I don't want that necessarily for them to teach them, the kids or the adults, whatever, the students, the way that they play. I want us to have a good system And so Steve does check those boxes for us, and it's a great formatted system for our company. And, he said, yeah, I could see how that could work really well. So I think that was a kind of a cool spin on that. And also I thought it was interesting how, he interpreted one of your disciples' actions as a reflection on necessarily like who you are as a person. And it wasn't anything. He talked your accolades up through the roof. He's like, oh, yeah, everyone knows who that is. He's a legend internationally in the tennis teaching world. So anyway, long story short, I do think that the GreatBase, whatever your opinion on it is, it is a great fit for something like my organization, where you do want that systematic approach, and you are trying to not only teach the students, but you're also trying to teach the staff who don't necessarily come from a predetermined way of coaching. And so it's plug and play for us. It's awesome. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that. One thing, Mark Bay was on a couple of weeks ago, and I liked how he said the generation of a tennis player is 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s. So he's talking about how many generations that he's now been working with tournament players. And Yvonne and I, along with another coach, we were just up in Philly, and there's at least a dozen coaches in the Philly area that I've trained. And so what happens is, well, where do they end up? So, that's one thing about the internet now, is that one of our, I guess, understudies, you could say, worked with a player, and I won't say the name or the pronoun. The player became very good, and they were told that they needed to leave what we were doing. They were told this by a national coach, and because they were cherry picked to go work with the federation, the USTA, and but now you can push the buttons and see, okay, what in tennis recruiting or UTR, what's their level, and where is this player, he or she, where are they going to, what college are they going to go to, and but yeah, start the course, stay the course. But for someone, I think it's very flattering, but the GreatBase is a system of systems. It's not, we hear Steve Smith stuff, use my name in third person, but,
right.
if they've studied it, to have a conversation, so say someone like Ryan Fleming, they were to talk to Ryan, who has, achieved a very high level of play, and now he's 25, 26 years old, and he's never heard tennis math. I didn't invent tennis math. I didn't invent the angles of a tennis court. I certainly didn't invent statistics, with Jacobson. And but yeah, there's a lot of confusion. I do think that also to the video system, if someone is a director of a program, and we're not out there handing out business cards, and I wouldn't want anybody I've trained to be doing that. Okay, you're a really good player. I'd like to coach you now. We need more of what you're doing. And it's so exciting to have you be on as a guest and talking about how you're growing the game, you and your organization, how so many people are playing. Because I do think there is that merchant of flesh, the third base coach, they're recruiting a kid who can already play. But we get ourselves in trouble if somebody says to us they want to be filmed. We go, are you sure? Like check your ego at the door. You really want to be skill tested? And, then it is a judgment call. You can hit the ball any way you want, but number one, prevention of injury. But some kid comes to you, they're 13 years old, and they can't hit the broadside of a barn. They don't really know their level. You put them through some simple skills tests, and then you film their serve, you film their forehand, and then it's like, well, you have to make a decision. Are you going to defy physics? Are you think you're going to hit a lot of clean, true topspin and get the racket below the ball? And I think that's what it turns people off. If say for example, somebody, this has happened to us. I mean, people come to us for a second opinion, and it happens at the academy level. Someone's been in academy for just say 5 years, and the parents have spent a lot of money, and then they have their game evaluated, and it's like, well, we're not going to tell you what we think. We're going to tell you what we know, and this is why you're going to miss wide. I mean, that racket face is open. You can't let the racket free fall. You're going outside in. The racket pulls horizontally, and good luck. If you're late, you're going to miss to the left. You're early, you're going to miss to the right. And I don't think tennis, for the most part, is that objective. I think people are very subjective about how they teach.
Mm.
With but tell us about grants. I mean, and I'm all for the USTA. I do think that we don't want to be critical. So it's a great organization, lots of great people, great causes. But no, we have problems with other federations as well. Well, we've worked with this kid for 5 years now. They're number one in the country, and now you want to change how they're hitting the ball. That's just a different segment. And the USTA is not just the small group of kids that are at the top of the junior pyramid. But how's it work for you for getting help to grow your business as far as grants?
Grant, you said grant money?
Yeah.
We have taken very little, but I think that we always are looking into it. I talked, so one of my coaches, for example, is on one of the committees, I think, for the Southern Tennis Association or the USTA. And they were telling me the substantial amount of money that didn't get dispersed for grant money last year. And I think that USTA put out another, at the beginning of the year, this year, they put out another chance for people to ask for funding. And he said, there's a ton of grant money available. It's not being used. And I was like, okay. Now, the time, the time it takes to get that grant money, the substantial, I've heard can take years. I don't know if that's always the case, but for organizations like ours, it's difficult. They love, as far as USTA grant money, right? There's several. And a lot of them prefer to talk with the location, right? We're contracting with the location. So to get it passed, we have to basically try to get the location decision maker, representative, whatever you want to call them, to fill out the grant form, follow up, with all their requests of proving that it's ADA compliant, all the different steps that they have to take. And we've been somewhat successful. For example, in Nightdale, we worked with it was a group effort. It wasn't just TennisBloc by any means. But it was a big part of it was Raleigh Tennis Association with Julie Dick, and partnered with us, and the mayor of Nightdale, North Carolina. They got a $50,000 grant from USGA to build Harper Park. And one of their requirements was that they had a program in place to be able to offer public, classes for tri tennis and USTA junior team tennis leagues and classes. And we have, that's what we did. And we did an event with the mayor and the whole city where USGA came out to kind of see the demand too. And that was an awesome event. We got video of that on our YouTube channel that you guys could always watch if you want to watch a really heartwarming video with the passion from the mayor talking about his dream for getting public tennis courts. They had no public tennis courts in Nightdale at all. The high school kind of shared them, but Harbor Park was built as a result of that. So that was one experience, but it's challenging. The USGA definitely helped us in the past when they were doing their school grant money. So they would do like an equipment match where they would, you could buy junior equipment from them at a buy one, get one. And that was really helpful early on. We did a lot of that. But apart from that, to be honest, we haven't applied a whole lot. We try to recommend our locations to apply, but it's something we probably need to look into. And we just haven't, we just haven't. It's not beyond what I just described.
With the future, what's on the docket for TennisBloc? And I guess before you say that, just touch base with for people to get on your website and to look at your YouTube channel you just mentioned. How do they do that?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, we have social media platforms of Twitter, X, and Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can search TennisBloc. On YouTube, we certainly don't have a lot of videos. All right. So we only have about 3, I believe, or 4. But one of the videos is me during our COVID series. During COVID, we did, play at home tips. And you can see me trying to coach a forehand. I'm scared for Steve to look at that because that was back in 2020. I definitely was thinner back then, so that's one good thing. But I've learned so much. I'm always trying to learn new techniques, and with GreatBase, there's a lot of similarities in what I've always taught, but it's much more it's much more systematic. So anyway, but that's one video on there, and then Instagram, we do a lot of posts. But yeah, check us out on social media. We'd love to, have you follow us, like us, and see kind of what we're doing in the area. But you would ask about what's next, or kind of what's on the agenda for TennisBloc. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you've done such an amazing job. 150 instructors. What was it, 135 sites?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you exactly what's been going on. So, and what the future. We're at this place now where we see we've always looked at technology as a component of our business. So we've kind of come to this place where, by the technology, we have several SaaS products that we've been trying to bring to market. Our main one was called a league management software, and in the early days, Grant, I mentioned, he created a league software management. So basically, one that did a lot more than TennisLink at the time. It solved the problems of the league coordinator, the captains. It does a lot of cool stuff. I mean, it's a sweet software. And there's still, there's a lot of, if you talk to captains, what are they using? They might be using Tennis Point, but a lot of them are using spreadsheets, right, to communicate with their players. I know. So anyway, at the time, we really wanted to create a league software, and we did. And we had several potential clients. One of those was Tennis Australia. And we had, actually, that was through the NC State. They connected us, and we had a guy that was ready to go with our software. It was he was one of the champions of one of the, you would kind of call it like a region there in Australia. It would be kind of similar to like USTA Southern. It was kind of like that region. And he was our champion, and he asked us if we could create a few tools that they use that are different formats. And we created those. And unfortunately, right before we signed a contract, he actually passed away, had some cancer complications. And that door shut real quick because no one else wanted to change, really, besides him. And so that shut that door. So we're like bummed about that. So then we approached USTA, and we had a lot of support from NC Tennis. We went to and we got a meeting with, the national president and the head of IT and all this stuff. And we presented our league software, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's really interesting. We love that, but we're going to do our own, And so now they've been developing technologies. They haven't released it yet, but they're trying to do that with Serve Tennis and so forth. The last client we had one other big client, and that was with the UTR. So we had the head of the president of UTR and the head of technology and marketing. We met with all of them several times, and we had a semi-working partnership with them. But of course, they decided they were going to make their own too. And that's the problem when it comes to technology, is you can't patent it. It's not proprietary. So anyone can just copy it.
Yeah, you present an idea. They're like, "Oh, that's a good idea. We should do our own for that."
Yeah, and that was a learning process for us, especially being a big little fish in a big pond.
Ego comes into that as well. It's just like with tennis teaching. I mean, that's what the GreatBase is all about. I mean, just showing some people, for example, in a matter of 15, 20 minutes, Welby Van Horn's body balance positions. And say, yeah, that's a good idea, but then they, put a spin on it and then they call it their own. Well, I'll do it a
Sure.
little differently. And I think that's really ego. Um, but it's amazing the growth of your business. Although I didn't realize until even having met with you and spent time with your coworkers and staff, and that I didn't realize that you and your partner had been at it since 2005. So
yeah, exactly. And I know that was a long intro, but that happened in the past. But long story short, we've been trying to decide on what SaaS products to invest in as far as technology. And right now, for anyone listening, we are looking for investors. We are making a separate business, but it's gonna be powered by our service side. But we would like to make several SaaS products, such as league management software, especially for round robins and for the pickleball industry. Right now, there's no dominant pickleball league software. We think that we can definitely influence that space. We also want to add court reservation software, member management software, and a lot of other tools that can really help the tennis industry. We would like to use those. We have all these, potential clients that we already work with that would be very interested in these products. So that helps us. We're like the right people for it, but the capital needed is we're not willing to bootstrap it. For one thing, it's speed to market right now is key. We're just in this key time. If we don't do it in the next year or so, someone else is going to do it. And so right now we're trying to work on that a little bit on the side. That's one thing. And also that would give us, by getting those tools, we would be able to use them for our service side. For example, one tool we want to add is when people sign up for classes, they can also sign up to be in like a ladder or like an organized play kind of a flex league, where we're not just, this repetitive lessons every season or whatever, which is fine, but people want to play. Like I mentioned, pickleball, there's a lot of places to play, but after a season or two, they say, well, how do I play? And our answer is, well, go to, Community Tennis Association and try to break into those cliques with the adult captains and, or whatever. That's not always the case. There's some awesome captains and there's some awesome pathways, but people want to play and connecting players. A lot of companies have tried to do this over the time. But we want a way to connect our players together and bring our players together and so that's like a cool model that we would love to add. Another cool thing that we're adding, which I'm really excited about, you're big on this, Steve, is the importance of assessing players, right? And, we're not going to get to the point where we're doing video work, I don't think, anytime soon in a consistent way, but we are going to be adding by this summer a new technology that will allow all the coaches to very easily assess their players based on any criteria that we make. It'll be a flexible assessment process. A lot of companies, other academies do this. I know my buddy who works for McEnroe Academy in New York. They do assessments, and guess what they use? They use spreadsheets, right? And they use Google Drive. We want to have a better experience for people to have assessments. We want the coaches to be able to see all the past history of all the players in their classes, and we want the parent to see seasonal reports of their kids' process. So they see the destination, they see the goal, and we just want a better way of doing that. So it's taken us a while, and by a while I mean several years, to be able to afford that. It is not cheap to create something like that. And we will have that enrolled this summer. So that's one big thing that I'm excited about. That's going to enhance our coaches' ability to coach. It's going to enhance our retention of players. It's going to give a great experience all around. So excited about that technology. And then beyond that, we're looking to grow. We really want to target a lot more locations, especially I just recently partnered and networked with a guy who ran a similar company like ours called the Edwards Tennis Group in Georgia. Well, he's since retired and he sold the company. But now he wants to help us do the same thing in his area. which is in North Myrtle Beach, South North Carolina, like Sunset area. And this guy's a machine. He's in his 60s, and we've only had several meetings, and we'll see where it goes. But he's really excited. He's already got 10 locations ready to sign on with us. So there's so much room for growth and growing programs that we're really excited about. So expanding to new locations, new territories, hopefully getting in the new states, constantly, and also looking at possibly getting new technology partners, possibly a new venture on the side to create just more tools that will facilitate the growth of the sport. So that's what's in the future for us. We're excited about it.
Oh, it's great to hear that. I do think that it's definitely important that the kids don't get lessoned out, programmed out, but there's a way to play. And years ago, every community had a ladder. I think one thing in talking to you, we had a mom on, former player, great story on a previous podcast, just a podcast or two ago from Madagascar. And she talked about when she first started, it was for her, it was kind of a neighborhood. I mean, you couldn't be more humble, more low key, no hype, just what I would consider a neighborhood program.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like to hear that the model for tennis in America is an academy, like where Joe Public, mom and dad, on every street USA thinks that their kid has to go to an academy to be a really good player. They should be able to go to the neighborhood court. And I think that's one thing about tennis in Spain is that, there's not that one-upmanship. Like, well, I do is a little bit better than what you do. A ready position is ready position, a unit turn, short compact swing, fundamentals are fundamentals.
Yeah.
Let's do this. If you have time to stay on air a little bit longer.
Yeah, I do. I have some more time. Mm-hmm.
Why don't we do this? Ivan, he's a scholar at this table. He's number one at this table. He can read through some notes, and then if you want to interject some comments, but this is a good way to just summarize, bring things to order for all the golden nuggets that you've shared. This will definitely help people out within the tennis world.
Yeah, just sound bites I collected as we were talking here, things I enjoyed. One new term that I learned from you, Jackson, was customer discovery. I've never heard of that before, where you go to customers. Communication and registration software, so basically technology, was a big leading drive in helping you form your business. Steve mentioned the word blunder would be a better word than the word mistake. And your preparation to scale is what ultimately helped when you were talking to those business people that were trying to help you out, preparing to scale. You mentioned how you were willing to spend as many hours as possible to get it done, which is great. But then you realize, if this does go to the scale that we would like it to, how will we be prepared for that? And it's good that you had that realization from this company, and it's good to hear that. 135 coaches, 150 locations. We mentioned how it was risky to invest in junior pickleball right now. I mentioned because not many well-known coaches, not many well-known pros, for example, and you had added that there are not really any leagues or teams for pickleball, and specifically junior pickleball. Off the couch and onto the court. That's what pickleball is doing, and I wanted to interject here. And we mentioned spec tennis as a bridge sport. We throw that term around, bridge sport for spec tennis, because the technical skills for spec tennis translate some to tennis, whereas not so for pickleball. However, in talking in this conversation, I would suggest that pickleball is a bridge sport in the fact that in the fact of proximity, since pickleball is so close to tennis. And if you have a community like you have created, Jackson, between tennis and pickleball, that pickleball is a bridge sport where they're playing pickleball, they look over and they see a tennis lesson. It's like, oh wow, maybe I should try tennis. So in that sense, pickleball is helping out tennis. Weekend warriors. I always love when I hear that. It just makes me laugh. Weekend warriors. 100% of our injuries come from pickleball. That's what you mentioned there, Jackson. I caught that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious to me because it's just close quarters, and somehow players are just. It's both good and bad. Bad because it's people getting injured, but good because people are getting out and exercising. So overall, for society, it's good.
Oh yeah, and it's not major injuries usually. I mean, a couple broken bones, like broken wrist, broken ankle maybe, but it's not happening that often.
I think it's more bruised egos, so somebody hasn't played a sport in 20 years, and then instant and pickleball is the light switch is just instantaneous. Pop up the toast, and it's like, yeah, I'm good to go. No, you're not good to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, bruised egos. We have following here. We got you mentioned Jackson. Compete with culture and mission. When we were talking about competing with the costs of becoming a pro. So, and you mentioned competing with culture and mission. I thought that was great. Identifying problems and finding solutions. Steve, you can help me out here. I believe the quote goes, "Life is waking up in the morning and enjoying battling problems." What was that quote? Do you remember?
Norman Vincent Peale, Power of Positive Thinking. That's a long story, but I had a chance to listen to him speak in person, and I think he's the author of the first self-help book. But number one thing is that just put your feet on the floor in the morning and go, yes, I got problems. Yes, I got problems. Because that's just life, that's how it goes.
Next, we got the 3 sections: the neck up, neck to waist, and waist down. We have my new favorite piece of terminology. Yes, Steve Smithians. I love that. Steve Smithians. I wanted to interject here, provide some insight. Some players don't, especially players and coaches and people in general that don't quite have exposure to, let's just say, good GreatBase, and all they hear is Steve Smith and Steve Smith stuff. That's most likely the most repeated phrase, I'd say, and it's very humbling. I can speak not on behalf of Steve, but from my own perspective, because I am also a student of the information where it isn't Steve Smith stuff, and he how many times he said that? Countless, and it is homework. And so the players and people and that don't have the exposure, I'd say, to the information. They didn't really have a deep dive. The expression, they judge the cover of the book. Don't judge the book by its cover. They're so quick to judge, and they see the cone and they're like, nobody's doing that, so it must not be correct. And it's not that at all. It's Steve had mentioned, he didn't invent gravity. He didn't invent the dimensions of the court. They always were there, and there is a efficient way to play the game. There is a way. Yes, the target's over there, so my racket needs to track out to my target. I have a better chance of hitting my ball there. It makes sense. And Steve over the years collected the information, and that's what's unfortunately become Steve Smith stuff. And it's not. It's great that he's collected all this, and it's so amazing to be around the information and be a part of it. And I just wish that more people would be exposed to it, and more people would understand where the information comes from. And so that's my little spiel on that, from an outside source that's been around it for a little while. So one last thing is, it was mentioned just prior, you shouldn't have to be an academy kid to get better, especially in the US. That was one of the last things that I had written down.
Jackson, let me do this. Let me rattle off one thing, and then why don't you close this? And I always tease and say something that we can go right on the bathroom wall. Although you're not supposed to write on the bathroom wall. Rennie Troxler. I hope it would be great if Rennie were to hear this. We're going way back. Somebody had trained to teach tennis in the 80s. Cool guy. And with his buddies, they had a house in Tyler, Texas. We had this program where you get a degree, tennis tech, Tyler Junior College. And these guys had the tennis tree in front of their house. And every time they wore out a pair of shoes, they lived in this house for 2 years. they tied the old shoes to the tree, and it was just the tennis tree. But I would say that, we have a coaching tree, but Rennie Troxler, we used to have a myth test. And in fact, we just came back from a tennis club where we handed out a myth test. These are myths. And Vic Braden was the myth buster. But an ego plug, maybe I should have used this as a slogan, is Rennie Troxler. We had a test on tennis myths, and he wrote on the paper, Steve Smith is no myth. But I didn't want to really ever put that in writing, because it was really Vic Braden who was the myth buster, not me. But yeah, well, it's been great to have you on. It's great what you and your team are doing for entry-level players, getting more people involved. But why don't you give us a closing comment and we'll sign off. I really appreciate you being on today.
Oh yeah, thanks so much for having me. This has been awesome. I very rarely get to tell my story, and as you can see, I can be long-winded because I get excited about it. I get really passionate about it. I don't get a chance to share, and with people that really want to listen. So this was really special for me. It actually really encouraged me, really motivated me. Oftentimes it's like when you're running a business, you don't always get the pat on the back. It's usually more putting out fires, and on a day-to-day dealing with the problems or the unhappy folks. When I used to be just on court all the time, I loved you get the immediate thanks from the parents, the smiles from the kids, and all that on a good day, of course. But we do have a lot of good times, of course. But this was really a highlight for me, because it always helps me take a second and look. It reminds me of where I've come from, and as a company, and what we've been able to do. And now I'm on the Steve Smith podcast, which is definitely a highlight of my career, for sure. And I say that as a joke, but not really. This is a big honor. I know you have a lot of listeners, and yeah, I mean, I'm not, just I guess a couple things just to close with is, as cheesy as it sounds, I've talked to a lot of, I've talked to a lot of people that said, "Oh, I had the same idea as you." That's what I wanted to do, or whatever. Basically, start a multi-facility tennis company, right? And the difference, I think, between, I guess, them and me is, a lot of it is, some of it's luck. Some of, definitely I had to be born at a certain time and meet the right people along the way. But that's paired with just never giving up, and just really, I failed. Like I said, I went out of business and owed a bunch of debt. I could have just called it quits there, but I just had a dream of making this happen. And I just worked at it. I just willed it into being. I really didn't imagine this type of success. And that's been a pleasant surprise. I would have been happy with anything. And I think the biggest lesson I've learned is try to enjoy the process. If you are only focused on the destination, you're going to not be happy for most of the time, because it's a process, right? And like Mark Twain has a quote, everyone's heard this one, right? But find a job you enjoy doing and you will never have to work a day in your life. I'm just so happy to be doing what I'm doing, because I don't feel like it's work. I really feel like what I'm doing matters, and it's what I love doing. I just love our mission. I love our culture. I love our passion. And so, yeah, that'd be my advice to any listeners. And also just wanted to thank anybody that's listening for giving me the chance to share our story.
Wow. Jackson, thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's definitely inspirational. We all need that. But we'll see you in a few weeks. We're gonna
all right, sounds good, Steve. Looking forward to it, and see you.
We're gonna come back to NC State. But Jackson, thanks again. That was fantastic. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Good night.
See ya.
Great podcast, Jackson. Steve Smith podcast, Mike Costa, University of Illinois. He spent a few, really funny guy, comedian. Weren't a lot of laughs when he was trying to play pro tennis. He gets a lot of laughs now, saying after 4 years he made $11,000. But he obviously was a very good tennis player to be on a Big Ten championship team, this and that. But he's on the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm going, whoa, Costa. That's like he's on TV. He's on a what do you call it? It's not a series. What's it when you're on a standing show? The Daily Show.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, Costa, I think he's on a Daily Show, but he's on the Joe Rogan podcast. Certainly, I could talk to Jackson all day long, but birth order, my radar went up when he said, "I'm the oldest of 5. I'm the youngest of 6." It's really interesting when families are smaller and smaller now, but a lot of lessons to learn when you're from a larger family. But no, grassroots level tennis. I think grassroots level tennis is neglected. I think same like with early childhood development, although they're, working with adults and working with all ages and abilities, but grassroots level tennis. But some highlights: family together. And he mentioned that's one of his goals, making tennis more affordable, more accessible, tennis for everyone, TennisBloc, tennis around the block, removing barriers, removing boundaries so everyone can get connected with a lifetime sport of tennis. And then, I like the phrase, they're bootstraps. They went the hard yards, and they, it's great to build something. It'd be better to me, I think, to be a builder than a maintainer. To digress, one thing on the Colorado coaches, Lexa Glatch. This young gal. I saw her play. I would think she's retired now, and I think when you talk about pro players, it's best to wait till they retire. But I saw her play for the longest time. She always wore this baseball cap and had the long blonde hair, and big athlete. And I was told that she could throw a football like from almost one end zone to the other. So she was brought to me by one Colorado coach and another college coach who had been working with her. We have it all on film. And I just remember Lexa Glatch. So we're breaking down some film. It was her. I think it was at the US Open, but she was playing Serena Williams. So I was like, wow, this is pretty big time tennis. But that's where there is too much infighting over who's teaching with who. And that's like, come on. For us, the GreatBase, Andy Fitzgerald's always telling me, don't pigeonhole it. I say, well, it's not just for beginners, but really to have people get the GreatBase. So it wouldn't be nice when people first enter tennis, like with what Jackson and his crew are doing with TennisBloc, that they get really good quality instruction from the get-go. And it's just like, hey, can we play Simon Says? Show me the ready positions. And Simon Says ready position. Simon Says uniturn. And people are going to agree that, okay, on a forehand volley, the racket is above the wrist. They're going to agree, hopefully, on the forehand volley that the strings have to go towards the target. But the numbers that he has, 135 instructors. And I would hope that some people listening would say, hey, okay, we want to do that in our part of the good old USA, let alone around the world. What do you got, Ivan? Sign off. One of these short 20-minute podcasts we have. What do you have to say? Sayonara.
Yeah, short 20 minutes. I'm glad to have a chance to listen and ask questions and talk to someone like Jackson Bowen we got here. TennisBloc, great to be associated with them in some way or another. It's great that we're having, they're helping us out with some workshops. We're helping them out with their staff. We're having one coming up June 1st and 2nd, NC State. Here's a little promo. You don't do it that often, but if you'd like to receive emails from us, we do have a newsletter. So just go on to the website and you can sign up there, get onto our mass email list and receive updates such as when we have our workshops, and where they're going to be.
I think it was great that he said he wasn't money motivated, but he did say money is nice. Yeah, we certainly are a nonprofit and ask people to like to thank the people who have donated money, but we definitely get an F. I get an F in fundraising. Yeah, we are a nonprofit, and you could help support our cause. But let's wave goodbye to the camera. Adios, amigos. Another one in the books. Podcasts. Never knew what I was getting into when Andy Fitzell started these. Oh, low. Adios.